Well, we want to thank you for staying with us. Now, if your partner criticizes you, tells you what to wear and how you should look, and treats you disrespectfully, then you should know that these are some of the signs of domestic violence. Here now to share a little bit about domestic violence and Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we've got Louise Lopez, who's a therapist, and thank you so much for coming and sharing with us.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Daren. It's always a good thing to be here and open.
Yeah, well, we're glad that we can open up the dialogue on this conversation about domestic violence. Sadly enough, there are a lot of people in households, and domestic violence occurs, and folks don't even understand that it's domestic violence.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, domestic violence is probably one of the lowest reported situations that happens. A lot of individuals only consider domestic violence when it comes to an actual physical event. But as you mentioned in the beginning of the segment, there are other things that can indicate domestic violence, such as emotional abuse, psychological abuse, even financial abuse. So those are some of the things to think about when we're thinking about domestic violence. It's one person, another way of putting it, one person has the control and the power. The other individual is sort of like powerless in the relationship, and those are some things to really consider.
Right. You talked about financial abuse. That's something that's very important because there are a lot of, I would say, couples, relationships where financial abuse occurs. Give us some examples of how financial abuse is, because I remember doing a segment not too long ago talking about financial abuse within domestic violence context, and some people were like, I never knew that.
That's a good question. So typically in financial abuse, there's one person who's controlling all the money. All the money comes in, and this person is making decisions of what you can and cannot buy, how can you use the money, where can you use the money, and the other individual basically has no say. If there's a certain situation that they want to spend some money, the person that has the power and the control in that domestic violence relationship would just say straight out, no, you're not going to do that. You're just going to get what I want you to get, and this is the amount of money you're going to use, and that's it. That would be an example of what financial abuse would be.
And emotional abuse, of course, we know is something a lot of people face. Talk to us about speaking out, because for those who are victims of domestic violence, the hardest part sometimes is speaking out and/or seeking help.
Absolutely, absolutely. See, when we think about domestic violence, the person who's outside of the situation or the relationship says, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just do this or do that? But the thing is that when you're involved in a relationship, there's a lot of factors that go beyond it. For instance, cultural factors, like I can't leave the woman would say, I can't leave my man, or the man would be like, I can't leave my woman. Religious beliefs, they got married. It's against my religion to divorce my husband or divorce my wife. There's financial situations. One spouse depends completely on the other spouse for financial assistance. If they leave, they wouldn't know how to survive. Children, they don't want to leave their children. They don't want to go through the struggles of custody battles. They don't want to go through court and everything that involves a custody battle situation. And other folks, it may seem simple, but other folks don't really want to leave because they love their partner. They just don't want their partner to behave in that way. And these are some of the factors that makes it very difficult for an individual to leave. Now, of course, it doesn't make it right. And as you mentioned, the individuals in this situation should call out for help, should seek help. There's 311 that you can call. There's, as I mentioned in the previous segment, there's counseling agencies around the neighborhood that can get you connected with companies and organizations that can help out with the domestic violence situation. One of the things to really consider is safety, right? You have to think about your safety. If you find yourself in a situation where your life may be at risk, there's certain things, certain steps that you should already have prepared beforehand to do. For example, what do I mean? Like maybe having a safety kit, like a phone number, sneakers, a cell phone, maybe a little bag of chips or something, that if you find yourself that your partner's at this situation where you're going to be harmed, you know how to get out.
Right. Talk to us about helping out, because there's a lot of people who want to help out, looking on the peripheral saying, I see my friend, I see my family member. They're engaged in domestic violence. And we know the situation of, Lisa Marie Velasquez, who's a 25-year-old, and she was killed for helping out, and her body parts found, in the water. Some people feel like, I can speak up, I can help out, I can help my friend. But the reality is, for many times, that person has to make up their mind themselves.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. The individual that's involved in domestic violence has to take the step. Everyone else can only provide support. It's unfortunate what happened to this young lady. I know that in her heart she really wanted to help a friend, and a tragic situation happened when she reached out to try to help a friend who probably called her for assistance in this domestic violence situation. Now remember, in this key, I mentioned earlier about power and control. You would think, like, why would someone help their partner do this type of situation? And it's because probably her partner had power and control over this person, manipulated them, and probably felt fearful, needed to do these things. So going back to the question, individuals that see family members or friends involved in domestic violence, I think the best that they can do to avoid any harm to themselves is probably try to encourage them to seek help on their own, through other agencies or hotlines.
What advice do you have somebody right now that may be a victim of DV and they're watching right now saying, hey, I'm going through this, I'm feeling this, I'm scared, I really just don't know what to do?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you find yourself in a situation, it's okay to reach out for help. You're not alone in the situation. A lot of people have gone through this and have been able to get out of this situation with the right help. So my recommendation would be to reach out to individuals that can actually help, organizations, 311, local clergy. There's a lot of connections out there that can really, really help. It's just a question of feeling comfortable. It's just a question of knowing when to do it. It's just a question of getting the help as soon as possible, especially if you find yourself that you're at risk of being physically harmed by your partner.
And oftentimes when you talk about domestic violence, you have men that are featured as, the aggressor, right?
Right.
But we do know that in situations, it's not just men that are aggressors. This happens with both genders.
Exactly. There is a low percentage, but there are situations where a woman is the aggressor. Those instances are sort of low reported, maybe because the man feels that, hey, I'm the man, I'm not supposed to be fearing my wife or something like that, or my spouse. But it does happen, and it's unfortunate as well. There has been, I think back in 2015, there was a report released by the state that there was a 3%, around that number, where homicides in New York State were because of the female partner or the partner of the man that caused that death in the domestic violence. So that's it's significant as well in this tragedy.
Yeah, things really to pay attention to. Final tips you want to leave us with?
At this moment, you're not alone. Anyone who needs help, counseling services are excellent. That's the purpose of counseling, to help individuals in need with any life stressors, including domestic violence. And reach out. We're here to help.
All right, Luis Lopez, thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, he's been our guest here on Open, telling you if you know someone that's suffering with domestic violence, please encourage them to get the help that they possibly can. And if you are a victim, don't be afraid to reach out. Take a quick break. Have more Open coming up. We'll be right back in a few.